Hello and welcome to another episode of Learning to Trade. It's going to be quite a short video this morning. I'm going to just take you through a bit of a recap and show you my current position in BitMEX. I think that is both a good and a bad idea, but I'm more interested in keeping a diary on what's going on and making sure that I'm transparent in everything that I approach. So, current short position that you can see here, the actual trade that is going on at this stage is here. So, as you can see what I've done, it's very different in terms of the this would be my entry, but I've actually set my stop market to here, which looks very different to this. The reason why I've left this as it is that I have this as an indicator of what I've actually taken. I can't change this won't allow me to go below. So it's just there really as a reminder of what trade currently in at the minute. So this is real time as what's currently happening in BitMEX. This was originally my okay. Here's something interesting that I did overnight because I was still very early on in this. I have concerns about being stopped out or losing, not locking in any profits. So what I did was I just made sure that I dropped my stop market slightly lower and bought this up slightly higher because in some respects, being on the right side of the trade is good, but also you don't want to wake up the next morning to find that there's been a bounce and it's sort of reversed up to the previous support. And you've effectively just lost out on all the opportunity to lock in any profits. So that in itself was one of the reasons why I bought this down. And my original target was just above the 6,000, I think, which was to this previous point here, because that felt like a kind of logical place for it to retest, perhaps not necessarily retest because that's not, I don't think, the correct terminology, but that's kind of one of the places where I would expect it to drop to. Again, could be wrong, but this is all part of experience. And also another thing that I didn't want to do was to lose out on an opportunity for quite a deep drop, which can obviously happen when you're not paying attention. And you can see here that currently still sitting in the position. Like I said, I'm always doing sort of small amount of money that I can afford to lose because I will always set a stop loss. It's usually higher than 1% of my total account, but my total account that I'm trading with is quite small because this is just a learning. Like I said, I don't do paper trading. I like to have a small amount of skin in the game because it actually keeps me focused and makes me feel the same emotions that I'll feel as I start scaling up. So it's one thing to say, make a profitable system and make sure that you can trade consistently. It's all very well doing that when the money isn't yours to lose. And the way I see it is that have a small amount of money, be it whatever it is that you can afford to lose, even if it's £5 or £10, it's kind of irrelevant about the amount of money. It's just relevant that you have some money in there. But again, that's just my opinion. That's how I like to do this. So what I'm going to do the rest of the day is I plan to keep an eye on this and manage it as it moves. One theory I have is that if I can continue following this down and trailing this stop loss down as it goes, eventually at some point it will My theory is that it will bounce around about here, and I think it's going to go back up. It's just based on previous things that happen. When there's a lot of when it ranges in a channel like this, and it's starting to bounce around in another horizontal channel, I believe that usually what happens is someone will send it. When I say someone, you just usually see these really large candles. I don't know whether I'd love to know why this happens, but whether it's out of boredom in the market and nothing's really happening. So, there's just this sort of trigger and everybody hops on it and pushes it up or pushes it down. I know that from what I've read, obviously when coronavirus was announced and there was obviously a lot going on, I think this sort of triggered a big cascade of liquidations, and it would have just sent it on this sort of spiral where everybody was getting stopped out, and it just continued going down. So I think just if this continues to move at a slow pace, I know it's a Sunday, so not necessarily expecting to see too much action, but strange to think of things have happened before. What I'm planning to do, like I say, is keep managing the trade. I've got no reason to really close out this short. I believe we have further to drop down. My target being, I said, around about the 6,000. I'm looking at around about 5,900. Something around that sort of mark. So it would be around there. And this is what I'm planning to do, is to if this was to start, if we were looking at this to start sort of maybe bouncing around, doing this, maybe hit the target, eventually start pulling back up. I would expect to see these EMAs cross over around about sort of here, and if they do cross, and there's no reason, if it doesn't quite hit and I don't take any profit and the EMAs start to cross, I'll actually get out at that point there, and I might start looking for a long, because I believe the next move that we are to expect, if you have a look on the 4 hour, another thing just to take into consideration, or one of the things that I'm looking at, is that the EMAs are crossing on the 4 hour, which to me signifies that we have further to go down. But things can change quite quickly, and these are obviously a lagging indicator, but based on the probability of stuff that's happened before, this is what I think is potentially going to happen again. So I'm keeping an eye out for that. What I think will happen at this stage is that we do drop down a bit further, and I think we're going to return. We're going to bounce up from this point of support. Let's draw something out on there. I think we're going to potentially come down further to here, and then I think we're going to see probably a bounce back up. So I'm just going to check on my notes actually what I think is potentially going to happen at this stage. So it could, like I say, it could potentially hit this, or we could be looking at something around about here. And then I think we are due a bounce back up. I think overall we're probably going to bounce up again to around about here. If you were to draw this out, I think you may still continue. No, there's nothing there that I can really see that gives me a reason to believe. So at this stage, I think I'm just going to be looking at the EMAs. And this is just gut feel. I have no real sort of technical reason to believe that it's going to behave like this, but it's a very do feel like it's going to head, just based on this trending down. The volume is, I suppose, I can't really tell from the volume at this stage. Like, there's nothing that I can really understand from that. Let's see how this plays out. So this is one of the things that I think is going to happen. If we do potentially move back up to around this point here, if we come up to here, what I might do is I might put an ask in around this sort of area, and I may expect it to bounce back down further. So I could potentially close my short at target. If that is the case, then I may look to open a long if it bounces, and this will actually be done at an even smaller amount. This will be done, this isn't a trade that I'd be looking to take for anything other than just sheer, I guess for fun, maybe one way of putting it, because I think that's what it's going to do. So I'll maybe take a very, very small trade at like cross leverage, or maybe just a really, really small amount of contracts, and just see if I can predict what's going to happen with the movement of this, and just, you know, like if I lose a couple of quid, so be it. But my main trade, like I said, that short that I'm currently sitting in, is something that I'd like to close out and take profits around this sort of area, and then see if we bounce up. If we do and hit this point of what I believe now to be resistance, I may place an ask around here, depending where the wick, you know, or I could actually, depending on what the time is at that point, I could, it's going to be tonight potentially, or tomorrow morning, I could be just waiting, keeping an eye on the price, and then potentially enter another short, bounce down to here, possibly take profit again, and then wait for it to fly back up. So that's kind of what I think is going to happen. Again, like I say, I'm going to be watching the EMAs. Would be quite nice if this would move slowly and start to round out at the bottom, but as we know at the current stage, you can see the state of how things are moving. It can be quite quick wicks up, excuse me, and then with that, I think the safest thing to do would be just keep an eye on it, not do anything, jumping into anything. If I see the EMAs cross down here, I actually think that would have to be quite a long period of time for them to start crossing, and I think it is going to move up faster than that through the way that the market is currently kind of whipping up and then coming back down. So let's just see how that plays out. Again, I have no technical reason to believe any of this. This is just how I feel from the you know, the way that it's previously been behaving. And I'll keep these on the charts for now. Come back to it maybe tomorrow or Tuesday and just see how we've got on. But at this point here, if we're looking like we're going to drop down further, seems to be hitting this EMA and keeps dropping down. But like I say, it's a lagging indicator, so it's not really that useful unless things are moving at a slower pace. You can't really predict anything happening like this, because after then it's too late. So when you actually have a look and say, well, you know, would I be potentially entering a short here? You could say yes. You know, you could just see them, they're starting to cross over at this stage here. So you could have perhaps looked at that and said, okay, I think it's going to happen. But then the argument could be said for, you know, there are actually other points in which that almost happens again. Although having said that, it's not a bad, you know, you start to cross over here and you think, well, maybe that's going to go up. But funny thing is it did. So that's why I'm looking at this 4 EMA cross at the minute. It seems to be quite a good way of keeping an eye on what's potentially going to happen. So like I say, if this is going to round out at the bottom, which I doubt, and if it travels at a slow enough pace, we might see the EMAs start to cross. If it starts building up, We'll look at the volume, see if the volume increases, and then potentially know that we are going to have another move to the up. We could be potentially looking around these levels here if it does bounce up, but overall on the 4 hour these EMAs have all crossed, which could signify that we're going to continue on a downward trajectory. And looking on the daily, we're still sitting under quite a lot of overhead resistance from the EMAs, but we'll see how that goes. I don't have a lot of hope for it to smash back up through there, but then, like I say, stranger things have happened. So yeah, with that, hope all of you are well and taking care during the current lockdown situation. Hope you're all staying safe. Oh, I didn't comment on the weather, did I? I'm almost taking it for granted now. Lovely blue sky, sunny morning. Hope you all enjoy your Sunday. If you're sitting in this trade with me as well, then good luck. I hope hope it continues going in your favour. Don't forget to lock in profits if you can. Yeah, today's going to be a good day. We'll keep an eye on this, see how it plays out, and I'll maybe be back tomorrow or Tuesday. All right, goodbye.